That's what I looked like when I first started teaching Social 19 in the fall of 1991. It was 150 students, which is about, I don't know, maybe a little smaller than the size of this area. It was in that room over in Waring Commons. As soon as it started, I was like, oh, this is cool. Officially, I hadn't studied in a certain sense, like this topic of race and culture and so on, except that I had. And even at the time, I had traveled to many places around the world. I just engaged. I'm just a person who really engages. Now I'm in a, very much over the course of my life, lived in a different world. But it was a really interesting class. Wasn't particularly interested. I didn't need to make a lot of money. I didn't need to have a lot of power. I didn't need to have a lot of things. I just really have enjoyed teaching. I taught my first class when I was just turned 24. It was a class on cybernetics and human ecology. And I got hired 10 minutes before class started. And it was a college class. And I walked into the room. And there were like 60 students. And I said, hey, man. And I probably said it just like that. Hey, man. Anybody know what cybernetics is? And nobody did. And I said, all right, neither do I. But we'll figure it out. Like we'll get there. And at the end of the end of the quarter, it was 10 weeks. It was really fascinating. Had a great quarter, and I really, in a certain sense, kind of fell in love with teaching, which was also really odd because I'm actually, in truth, I'm kind of shy in certain groups. For whatever it is, when I get up in front of a large group like this, I'm not shy at all. It's like a theater kind of thing, right? When people start acting and singing on stage or whatever. Some of you might be like that, and you can bust out in song. But in truth, I'm actually a little bit shy. So I was struck by the fact that I really enjoyed teaching. But mostly, I think I enjoyed teaching, I suppose, because it's an opportunity to speak out loud. You teach yourself. You learn about the world. And then, since then, I've really come to realize it's not about me at all. It's actually about learning from you all. Actually, kind of interesting, it just hit me one time. I spent some time in a Buddhist monastery, and I had an opportunity to meet the head of the monastery. And, he's like the Buddhist, like a priest. He'd been there forever, some old dude. And it was crazy. Like I had to, in order to he was sitting, man, may I wish upon you all at some level to have some of the experiences I've had in life. Shit. So there's a big room, right? And he's sitting like lotus style, like right here. Okay, so like this, right? And his eyes are closed and he's just in deep meditation. And I had the opportunity to ask him one question. One question, right? Now, mind you, I'm there all week, so they're building this up. You got an opportunity. They taught me how to enter the room, because you got to learn everything. You got to do it right. Like, this is the thing with Zen Buddhism in particular. It's so full of, you want to achieve freedom and liberation from your thoughts, but to do that, you have to control all your thoughts, which is kind of wild. Anyway, to enter the room, I had to open the door. I had to enter it like this. Watch. I had to say a couple prayers, and then now, mind you, I'm walking backwards because I can't walk forward, and I'm thinking, I'm going to run right into this motherfucker, right? So I'm like, so I had to kind of look back, and I get to the place where I'm supposed to be. I get to, and I turn around, and now my job is to sit down in front of him, right? So I sit down, and I just sit like this, in this Zen kind of way, and I wait for this guy to let me know that it's time to ask a question. And the way he knows is this. He's sitting like this, and he's deep in meditation. And then he does this. And that was it. He opens his eyes. And I'm like, oh, okay, here it is. So I say, listen, man, I feel like I'm supposed to be teaching. And I said, I'm supposed to be teaching. I'm sure of it, because I enjoy when I'm in the classroom. It's really the only time in my life when life slows down for me. Students appear to enjoy the experience that we have in the classroom. I still have a job. They still pay me. I don't know why I feel like I'm supposed to do something else. So he's looking at me like this, right? I tell him my story. He says, you have to learn how to learn from your students. So it took me a number of years to figure out what he was talking about, but I've since been doing that. And I really love teaching, and it's utterly fascinating. And so now this class is very much a reflection of that. That's my dad. My dad was 57 maybe when I was born. My mom was 45 when I was born. I'm outside the box, right? Look, they dress me in pink. Pink used to be a masculine color, by the way, which is really interesting. So like here in the West, pink, even in the early part of the 20th century, pink was the masculine color. It's a color we used for boys. And then somehow in the mid-20th century, that shifted for girls. But, that was my doll, my little pink jumper with giraffes on. So I was meant to be, at the very least, to bend gender. Let's just say. I was meant to bend gender, or they were cool with it. They didn't care. So, and meaning that I was just outside the box. And I was always outside the box, even as a little kid. We're just always kind of doing my own thing and enjoying doing my own thing and not following other people. And so somehow that just has worked for me. I don't know. It worked for me. It works for me in a classroom. But I never, once my dad died, he was really about science and math and so on. And I loved science and math. But I didn't have anyone to guide me. I mean, it was my mom. My mom was working 3 jobs. We were working class. So once he died, we didn't have money. I mean, it was like, oh God. But it's okay. But it's fine. I mean, we have money. We never didn't eat, but we were working class, and my mom was working 3 jobs and this sort of thing. And I started working to make money to buy my school clothes at the age of 12. So that kind of stuff, right? But I didn't have to take school serious. I was able to take school at my own pace. And I was an avid reader. I used to love to read. I would go to the library. My neighbor would take me. I'd come home with a stack of books like this, starting at age 12, 13, and maybe earlier. And I would devour the books. And 2 weeks later, we'd go back. And I just loved to read. By the time so when I was 12, I discovered marijuana. And that took me in my head at some level. And it allowed me to really see that thinking is pretty awesome. School sucks, but thinking is really cool. So I never had to get good grades because I didn't have anyone telling me, you got to get a job and you got to do this and you got to do that, you got to make money. My mom, when I was graduating high school, she said, what are you going to do with your life? And I'm a musician. So I was playing rock and roll. I've been playing music, gigging out since probably the age of 14. And I said, I think I'll be a musician. I don't really know. And she said, well, the city, the courthouse is hiring court stenographers. That's the person that sits up in front of the courthouse and types everything that happens word by word. Now it's probably recorded, and because I was really good at typing, and because it's the one class I did really well in high school, and it's like she'd be great. You get a pension, you make a decent salary, and that was her. She's not saying, "Hey, son, you should be a lawyer or an engineer or a doctor." She's like a court stenographer. That's your level, but I didn't do that. But I never had pressure on me to get grades, to do anything. It was like a complete liberation. So in high school, I just did whatever I wanted to do. I would skip class. I'd go down to the library. I'd read books. It just didn't matter. And then when I started college, I started at a university that just would have to accept me. I mean, I was playing music and doing stuff from home, but I was at a university that had to accept me. And so then I just struggled. I mean, I don't know. After 2.5 years, I was still about halfway through my freshman year because I would take a bunch of classes and drop them and that kind of stuff, right? But then one day, 2.5 years in, one day, I had transferred to a 2-year college. I'm like, yeah, I don't know if this is for me. I don't know, but whatever. Maybe I'll get a 2-year degree. But one day, boom, like something happened. I said, I'm going to actually take thinking seriously. Like, I was reading a lot, but I hadn't systematized the way that I think. And I was tired of not being able to really think on my own terms. So I said, I'm going to take school seriously. So I quit everything I was doing, and I became a serious student. My first semester that I was studying like 8 hours a day now, not very difficult classes, I got 2 B's and 2 C's. And 2 B's, 2 C's. And I'm like, oh, yeah, all right, I killed it. And then I just slowly worked up from there. Because you have to learn how to get grades, right? Like, it's one thing to be a thinker, but you got to learn how to get good grades. Like, there are a lot of people who really aren't very smart at all. They wouldn't know which end of a screwdriver to use. But they get A's. And I'm like, okay, whatever, right? I don't want to hire you, but whatever. Well, not to fix my electricity or whatever. But anyway, so what I have continued to discover is that most people who say they don't like school, what they don't like is formal education. They don't like jumping through the hoops and having to get grades and all that kind of stuff, right? But a lot of people like thinking. Thinking. That's the key. You don't need to think like I think. I don't want you to think like I think. Obviously, you couldn't do that anyway. Because you know what I mean? Because you can't be inside somebody's head. And you don't have to memorize nonsensical things. You don't have to whatever. You just have to think. And my job is to provoke you into thinking so that every day when you leave this classroom, you're wrestling with something. Maybe it's something you agree with, you disagree with, something somebody said, doesn't matter. Maybe it's something that you think is too, I don't know, like liberal or something you think is too conservative. Doesn't really matter. We'll be all over the place in here. But when you leave, you're challenged to, I don't know, to have an argument with yourself, with somebody else, with me, with someone in class, with a family member. If I can get you to do that, then you're thinking. And that's what school is. That's why we're here. So anyway, that's my job. Everyone's going to get challenged in here. So we talk about race. Half of this is about U.S. issues, and half of this class is international issues. There are students in here from all over the world. We would do lots of international stuff, lots of U.S. Work. There's so many things happening in the world of race and culture and ethnicity. This is the thing about this class that's really cool is we can put lots of ideas out into the room and people, you're going to agree and disagree with certain things. But remember, if you leave here, I've heard people, say like about this class, I didn't learn anything new. I'm like, seriously? That, by the way, that's like the dumbest fucking thing you could ever say in a class like this. Like, if you ever hear anyone say that, you have my permission to say, oh, my professor thinks you're an idiot. But because, not from me, but from you all are going to be up here talking. You're going to talk about where you live. You're going to talk about, all sorts of things, right? And to think like you don't learn anything, it's like, that's painful. I can hardly even hold that thought in my mind.